Welcome to Sufi magic. Sam, son of Prophet Nuh, whose offspring spread into Arab and Asia. Then Sam as son Iram, and Iram as grandson was called Ad, whose lost city of Iram I told you about in the previous chapter. This Iram had a grandson from another lineage called Thamūd. From Thamūd, a new ancestry began called the children of Thamūd, or the people of stones. They were first pure Arabs, called the ancient Arabs. And Quran often speaks about these cousin nations, Ad and Thamūd, together. If you remember, the mention of people of Iram in Quran was 24 times. Their cousins, the people of stones, are mentioned 23 times. Thamūd has been a nation spread over a long period of time, and they were inhabited in the valley of Hijr, which lies between present-day Saudi Arabia and Jordan on a travel route. Quran also refers to them as the people of the stones, because they used to carve their houses in massive stone. These rocks have survived till the day. The Prophet sent towards them was Hazrat Saleh, and Ali Hijr demanded him to perform a miracle to bring out a she-camel for them out of solid rock mountain. And what happened then? It did not suffice them what they had acquired. But what had they acquired? Who were the people of Thamūd? What achievements are being talked about here? And most importantly, like their cousin nation Ad, what was their crime? One thing is certain though, that the people of Hijr came after the people of Iram, because Allah tells us so in Surah Araf. But in archaeology, unlike the people of Ad, the people of Thamūd can be seen in many traces. We have barely found a single mention of Ad in archaeology by the name of Ad. But the people of Hijr are found at least 5 times in archaeological records. Their first mention can be found in 5,000 years old civilization of Sumer. I will tell you about Sumerians with great details in the 9th chapter. Their second mention can be found in the 2,705 years old tablets of an Assyrian king Sargon-II, where he is talking about the desert-dwelling people of Thamūd and is expressing his loathing towards them, for they are not sending him tributes. Their third mention is found with the 2,556 years old last Babylonian king, Nabonidus, in the form of a royal order, in which Thamūd, meaning Thamūdi Arabs, a man from Thamūdi Arabs, is being ordered to pay the silver coins to. And according to this letter of royal order, that man was a rich merchant. Their fourth mention can be found in 2,100 years old Sephatic tablets. These tablets are written by the vagrants of Jordan and Syria. These tablets speak of a year when Thamūd and Gazm had a fierce and a bloody fight. And their fifth mention can be found with only 1,800 years ago Romans, where they speak about a temple in Al-Rawafa area, which was built by Roman governor himself, with the support of the Thamūdi Arabs, and moreover that they used to help fight the battles with Romans, meaning that they acted like an auxiliary support for the Roman army. But are you noticing something strange going on here? That the mention of Thamūd is spread over 3,300 years of history, and doubtlessly, if we had data older than Sumerians, we would certainly find a mention in that too. It was a nation spread over a long period of time, and one of the strangest things about them that, according to Human Genome Project, even today, Rabari tribes from Sindh and from Rajasthan can be traced back to Thamūdi Arabs. Where and how Ali Thamūd lived? Surah Araf narrates a message from Allah to them, that Allah has made you successors after the Ad, and has granted you place on earth, in a way that you build palaces on soft ground, and you carve houses in the rock mountains. There's a place between Saudi Arabia and Jordan called the Valley of Stones. It is also known as Madain Saleh, 131 large rock mountains cut and carved into palaces and houses, and their official discovery was also done in a strange way. Do you remember me telling you that in the 19th century, when Europe was ruling the Arabia, it was common among the Europeans to put wagers on their desert adventures? Similarly, in the year 1812, a traveler from Switzerland went to visit Jordan. He got lost but accidentally discovered Petra in the mountains. The tales of his travels inspired many Englishmen. Among the inspired ones was a name, Charles Montague Doughty. He too had heard the stories of houses cut and carved into rock mountains. So, in the year 1876, he traveled with a caravan coming from Europe to perform pilgrimage to Mecca, and thus officially discovered the Valley of Stones. 131 magnificent palaces carved beautifully into rock mountains. Surah and Kabat, and the people of Ad and Thamūd met a similar fate, which must be clear to you from their ruins. But carving 131 palaces into rocks in the Valley of Stones was their ever biggest achievement? Perhaps not. Carving 131 rock mountains was not enough. Pay attention to Surah Araf. Allah has made you successors of Ad and has established you in the land. Surah Hud also mentions about Thamūd as established in land, and the meaning of the verse is brother of Thamūd. Prophet Saleh preached him that Allah has created you from earth, and He is the one who established you in land. In fact, this marks the start of a very interesting part of this chapter, for which, with great effort, I have prepared some maps too, so I will be able to show you their achievements. Thamūd inhabited a very special region, a very strategic location of the Valley of Stones, a region that was going to be the center of a trade route coming in a few centuries. The incense trade route was called as such because it was the only route in the entire world which brought spices from India and incense from Arabia, and animal hides from Africa, wood from China, silk and gems and many other valuable commodities were transported between Europe, Arabia, India and Java Islands through this route. In fact, even today, Silk Route is also a small part of this 2,700 years old global route. I will show you the entire route in the map, but if you look closely, you will notice that all of the routes are creating a hub in a certain region. A hub between present-day Saudi Arab, Jordan and Palestine. A center. A hub connecting Africa, Arab, Asia and Europe. Exactly the region which people of Thamūd used to inhabit. This nation had greatly established in terms of gold and wealth. Established in a region where wealth of Arab, Asia, Africa and Europe was coming like a magnet. You may now relate that why the Babylonian king had ordered Thamūd, who was a wealthy Thamūdi merchant, to be paid with silver coins, or the Assyrian king was complaining about the absence of tributes from them. Indeed, Thamūdi people from the time of Prophet Saleh lived long before the incense trade route. But this region was surely the hub of a global trade route even then, and their palaces show it all too well. But what was their crime after all? Their crime is also mentioned in Surah Araf, that Allah had established them in land. They carved magnificent palaces in the rock mountains, but then they made a grave mistake. Like their cousin nation, the people of Ad, they committed pride, corruption and infidelity, and the worst form of infidelity, the idolatry, against Allah, who had established them. During my research on the religious practices of the people of Thamūd, I found 4 major names. Do you remember the Sephatic tablets? They tell us about the supreme deity of Oli Thamūd called Dush-Shara, and the other 3, Al-Lat, Uzza and Manat. These 3 deities are mentioned in Surah Najm by name. They were the most infamous deities, and even thousands of years later, the infidels of Makkah were venerating these names. A book written in 7th century by Hisham al-Kalbi, called The Book of Idols, provides a detailed account of these idols. And I will tell you about idolatry with great details in the 18th chapter, but for the sake of references in this chapter, I will tell you this much, that they were female deities who were considered by infidels as the daughters of Allah, according to Surah Najm. And this is why Prophet Saleh invited the people to monotheism. This invitation of Prophet Saleh is there in Surah Araf, that remember the blessings of Allah and do not spread mischief in the land. You will also find it in Surah Hud, that worship Allah and ask for salvation and return to Him. You will also find this invitation in Surah Shura and Surah Naml, that do you not fear Allah? Fear Allah, and I ask nothing from you, for Allah will reward me of this. But what worldly possessions you have, are you going to enjoy them forever? So fear Allah. Surah Naml, why do you not repent? And how did they reply? Is there in Surah Hud, that O Saleh, we had expected highly from you, but you are stopping us from worshipping those who have been worshipped since the time of our forefathers. Surah Shura, we suspect that you have been bewitched. You are a human like us, and if you are right in your claim, then show us a miracle. And it was then, when they asked for a miracle, that bring for us, out of this rock, She-camel with 10 months of pregnancy, meaning a she-camel, who would only be 5 months away from delivering a calf. And so it happened. The rock cracked, and a she-camel emerged from inside it with a pregnancy of 10 months. That particular she-camel is mentioned in Quran at least 6 times, and on 3 places she has been given a name that was given to her by Prophet Saleh in Surah Shams, the she-camel of Allah, the camel which belongs to Allah. Witnessing this miracle, according to Surah Naml, the people of stones split into 2 groups, those whose hearts leaned towards Allah, and those who became even more rebellious after witnessing the miracle. After this split in the opinion, Prophet Saleh gave them a caution that is mentioned in 5 surahs, and from all those mentions, the summary of Prophet Saleh's caution goes something like this: look, this is Allah's camel. Leave her alone, so she shall graze in the land. Do not harm her in any way. She will take the turn to drink on one day, and you will the trun on the 2nd day. You must respect her turn, and do not touch her with any bad intention shown, or you will be punished with a painful wrath. I had told you about 131 rock mountains in the Valley of the Stones, and that how had they been carved into living palaces? But the thing I really wanted to tell you about was a discovery made in the year 2018, a discovery hidden from eyes for many thousands of years. This discovery was made by 3 major institutes like King Sword University, CNRS of France, and Archaeological Department of Max Planck Institute of Germany, in the Valley of the Stones. At the time of discovery, they assumed it to be something from 2,000 years old Roman period. But later, to figure out its actual age, many direct and indirect tests were conducted. For example, tool mark analysis and rock erosion analysis and luminescence dating technique was used too. And it was then figured out that the said discovery was 7,000 to 8,000 years old, and the discovery was of life-size camels, sculpted and carved in the rocks of the Valley of the Stones. The chief archaeologist of the team who made this discovery was Dr. Maria Gwognin. She had given her interview to an Israeli newspaper called Haaretz, and I want you to listen very carefully to what she had said. The term which we use in archaeology for such carvings in rock is called reliefs. An important thing is that some of these rock-carved camels seem to have round and bulging bellies, as if they are pregnant. We find many such rock reliefs from the Neolithic age, but none of them are so vivid. as vivid as the reliefs from the Valley of the Stones. These reliefs give a feeling as if the camel is coming out of the rock. This is not what I am writing. These are the words of archaeologist Dr. Maria Guognin, lead archaeologist of Germany's Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History. The place where these reliefs were discovered is called the Camel Site, but the official name for this entire region is Al-Hijr Archaeological Site. The entire report was published in the Journal of Archaeological Science, and it gives one additional information, that in the cracks of these rocks, we have found some bones belonging to an animal, who must be camel-like, but we assume that these bones belong to those tools that were used to sculpt these rocks. I will later discuss this point further. I don't know what are you thinking, but 7,000 to 8,000 years old camel reliefs carved and sculpted in the mountain rocks, in a way that they seem to be pregnant. Reliefs so vivid as if the camel is coming out of the rock, and on the other hand, the people of the stones demanding their prophet to bring out a pregnant she-camel for them out of the rock. For me, the resemblance in these two events is way too much. Let me tell you something for your interest, that when these reliefs were being carved, it was the time when human had yet not domesticated wild camels, meaning the man had still not tamed camels. There are two kinds of camels. The first kind with a single hump is called dromedary, and the second kind with two humps is called Bactrian. Bactrian was domesticated by humans some 4,000 years ago, and the single-humped dromedary was domesticated some 5,000 years ago. So the rocks 3,000 years before the camel domestication. How come do they hold such camel reliefs? Do you remember the cave paintings I showed you in the chapter of Noah's Ark? Do you remember me telling you that? These cave paintings can teach us something very important, that whenever humans saw something new, he desired to acquire it, and he expressed his desire in some way. He showed his desire in some form. When he saw deers in the forest, he painted deers in the caves, meaning an expression of food and nature. In the form of a painting, when he saw lions, he painted them too, meaning an expression of power and control over the jungle. In the form of a painting similarly, in the Valley of the Stones, where the domestication of the camel had still 3,000 years to wait. Allah knows what they used to think when they looked at the wild camels in desert. But one thing is very clear, that they wanted to acquire them, and what we are looking at today is probably an expression of their desire, an art expression in the form of camel reliefs carved into the rock. Allah knows best if they desired for such a miracle, due to their this very desire, a pregnant camel who could deliver a calf to them. But soon, according to Surah Qamar, the she-camel became a test for them. Her turn for the water started to annoy them. Her wandering in the city started to agitate them, and eventually they took a decision. Although Surah Araf gives a title to the elders of the people of the stones, arrogant chiefs, but Surah Naml speaks specifically about 9 elders who had no good in them. The worst people of that city, and according to the exegesis of Ibn Jarir, the whole incident begins with 2 women of the people of the stones. First woman was Sidda, who enticed a chief named Mazrah, also her cousin. She provoked him to kill the she-camel. And the other woman, Oniza, who, through her daughters, enticed another chief named Kedar, provoking him to kill the she-camel. And these 2 chiefs were joined by 7 others, and together they took the ultimate decision, the act from which Prophet Saleh had forbade them over and over again, that do not hurt the camel, but they decided to take one step further, to murder the she-camel of Allah. And one day when the camel was returning from the water well, then the chief named Mazrah, who was provoked and enticed by his cousin, Siddat, he fired arrows on the she-camel's legs. But this did not satisfy those women. They came out in the open and started to wail, and enticed and provoked men to kill her. And according to Surah Qamar, Fanadu Sahiba Hum, meaning then they loudly called the eldest among them. And then Kedar stepped forward, provoked by Onisa through her daughters, harshly slashing his sword on the she-camel, severing her hamstring muscles. Hamstring muscles are the backside muscles of thighs, and this cruelty was repeated once again in the 18th century, when during the slave trade, the hamstring muscles of slaves were severed, so they could not run and escape. After severing her hamstring, the she-camel gave a heart-wrenching scream so her calf may escape and save its life. But Kedar was not yet satisfied. One after the other slashes of spears, and the she-camel of Allah was eventually murdered. Her young calf started to climb a hill, howling and crying, and disappeared. But according to the exegesis of Ibn Jarir, 3 times he screamed loudly before he disappeared. This cruelty against the she-camel of Allah is mentioned in Quran 6 times, and the man who committed this cruelty is there in Surah Shams, referred as Ashkahar, meaning the worst man of that city, the most wicked one, the most wretched one, the one who severed the hamstrings of the she-camel of Allah. Allah has referred to him as the worst of all men, and the Prophet of Allah in 2 different hadith has referred to him as the worst of all men. During one of his sermons, Prophet Muhammad spoke of the she-camel and that man, and reported that he was powerful and dominant among his nation like Abu Zama. And once, Prophet Muhammad informed Ali ibn Talib that, "O Abu Turab, should I not tell you about the 2 of the worst men? A man with red complexion who killed the she-camel of Allah, and the other who will hit you in a way that your beard shall be drenched in blood." Her calf, before he disappeared, had screamed thrice, and for that, Prophet Saleh gave them 3 days. Surah Hud. Now, you can only live in your houses for 3 days, but those who are possessed by blasphemy become blinded in their hate. So according to Surah Naml, they swore that before the night fall, we shall kill Saleh and his family too. But now, they were damned for the command of Allah. Their faces started to change. The day 1 gave them pale faces. The day 2 gave them red faces. And by the 3rd day, their color had fallen black. An earthquake occurred at the time of sunrise, and according to Surah Dariyat, the sky gave a loud, sharp and unbearable scream, which shook them to the ground, and they could stand no longer. Their souls left their bodies out of fear. Their life started to end painfully. Their movements became rigid, and according to Surah Araf and Hud, they were left in their houses, fallen upside down. Nothing but life, less bodies, void of any kind of life or movement, according to Surah Hud, as if they never even lived there. According to Surah Qamar, after the scream, they remained there as if twigs. According to Surah Najm, none of them survived except those who believed in Almighty. And according to Surah Naml, their palaces have been ruins ever since, and those who have knowledge will see many signs of Allah in their story. But how can a scream kill a human being? And why the scream? The part of this chapter which starts now. I will give you answers to both of these questions, but I have a question from you. Have you ever wondered that which kind of sounds our bodies can take and which not? Let me explain this to you. Every human being has a hearing range, sounds below the frequency of 20 Hz, meaning infrasonic, and frequencies higher than 20,000 Hz, meaning ultrasonic, are inaudible to us. But the loudness of these sounds is measured in decibels rather than hertz. To make it more clear to you, I will give you the example of a truck whose engine loudness can reach up to 80 decibels, and the loudness of a jet engine can be up to 130 decibels. These sounds are usually bearable, but as the loudness crosses 150 decibel mark, you will start to feel its effect on your body. I will give you 4 real-life examples of such sounds. The first example is of a rocket launch. A rocket launch can create sound up to 165 decibels loud. It cannot kill you, but it is enough to tear your eardrums. In fact, Saturn V, a space shuttle, created such a high amount of energy from its launch sound that the cement or the concrete on the launch pad had actually melted. And after this incident, the European Space Agency had their launch pads flooded with 300,000 gallons of water so that it could absorb the sound energy created at the time of launch. Or else, with such height amount of sound energy, the launch pad and the satellite both could have been damaged. But later, to permanently address this issue, the Space Agency designed a speaker in Holland to create an extremely loud sound. It is called an acoustic orifice. The purpose of its design was to test the limits of our satellites against the energy of sound. And about this speaker, I will only say that if you stand against this speaker, and this speaker is switched on, then your ears will bleed like a squirting fountain. The second example might surprise you a little bit, because a voice louder than that of a rocket actually belongs to a living being, the blue whale, the largest animal on Earth with the loudest sound among any living thing, reaching up to a 180 decibels loud. It would be such a powerful sound that if, at the time of its creation, if you're somewhere near the whale, the sound will create such a vibration in your body that your body will heat up. The third sound actually belongs to a natural phenomenon. The year 1883 was marked by a volcano blast in Indonesia, and even today, many of you must be aware of this infamous volcano, Krakatoa. The sound created from its blast was such a high sound that the sound waves created from its blast encircled the entire Earth 4 times. It was such a loud sound that, according to an official report of Dutch East Indies Company, 165 villages were wiped off from the shock waves of sound before the sound even reached to them. And the fourth voice is virtually a complete mystery to us that what caused it. Year 1908 in Siberia marked the moment when the loudest sound in recorded history had occurred. Around 7 in the morning, the remotest parts of Siberian wilderness heard such a loud sound that it crushed flat the trees in the entire region of 2,200 miles radius. And by modern calculations, this sound was never any lower than 315 decibels. And now I want to present you the photographs taken from that part of Siberia, taken right after the Tunguska event, a name given to this incident, and you will be able to fully understand the verse from Surah Qamar, that how that scream must have flattened them to the ground like twigs. 210 kilometers away from the epicenter of this sound, an eyewitness could only tell that the sky split in two, and 10 minutes later, such a powerful sound came that we fell unconscious to the ground. Where did that sound come from and what caused it? To this day, nobody knows for sure. There are many theories, but nobody knows what actually happened. Even today, the section of cause in the case file of this event carries 2 words, unknown event. You must be thinking that I have told you about the sounds louder than 200 decibels, which are pure death for us. But I didn't tell that why it happened so. Sound. How can a loud sound kill us? The rupture of the eardrum is understandable, but why death? A sound louder than 200 decibels will first rupture your eardrums, and then it will create embolism in your lungs, which means that your lungs will be filled with large air bubbles, and this air pressure will reach to a point where your lungs will literally burst. But it will only happen if you are still alive, because with such a loud sound can give you an immediate heart attack out of pure. Damaging sounds are not always louder. Do you remember me telling you that we cannot hear frequencies lower than 20 Hz either? But what will happen if we are in the way of infrasonic sounds? If these infrasonic sounds are released, directed and focused on your body, then first of all, your eyeballs will start to vibrate badly. Then there will be severe painful cramps in your body, and you will be throwing up. In fact, you must have heard of some countries working on their sound weapons. They are, in fact, working on these very same ultra-low frequency sounds weapons. referred by them as sonic bullets. And in the end, I want to tell you about the most mysterious sound in nature, about which our knowledge is almost nil. Neither do we have any strong theory for it, and nor do we have any strong explanation for it. We have only been hearing it silently. This sound has been coming from sky like a boom, and it is called sky-quakes, referring to an earthquake in the sky, whose source is an absolute mystery for us. So far, it has been observed all over the globe. These sky-quakes have been reported from all over the world, and although they have never caused any casualty, but sometimes they have become loud enough to break glass plates in houses. So far, this strange and weird sound has been reported from Ganga River in India, from Finger Lake in America, North Sea in Japan, Sumatra and Java in Indonesia, then Holland in Europe, then Brazil, Mexico, in fact, all over the globe. It was heard 4 times in 2020 and was heard last in February 2021. In Indonesia, there are some theories about this sound, but I will only tell you about 3. The first theory says that our sun is a star made of ball of fire. In simple terms, sometimes our sun spits out massive waves of fire called coronal mass ejection, but sometimes these waves of fire become ultra-massive. Correction. A wave of fire spitting nearly 40 million kilometers out into space. This wave is so fierce and powerful that it creates a shockwave through the space. The shockwave is so powerful that it reaches our planet, and the theory says that when the shockwave enters our atmosphere, then it creates a roar and a sonic boom upon interaction with our atmosphere. And this is the sonic book which results us to hear these strange sky-quakes. The second theory is that when larger meteorites come to our Earth from the sky, when they enter into our atmosphere, they are passing at extremely high speeds, meaning at the speed of 71 kilometers/s. Entering our atmosphere at such incredible speeds, they create a loud roar, which may cause the sky-quakes. And the third theory says that under our oceans and beneath our grounds, there are large hollow caves, and when those caves collapse, then we hear these breathtakingly fierce sounds in the form of sky-quakes. So far, all of these theories are speculative. The truth is that we know nothing of these sky-quakes. They are nothing but pure mystery for us. But what happened to the people of the stones? After them, the area was into ruins for many centuries to come. 600 years before the birth of Jesus, a city was established there called Al-Ula, but it also turned into ruins, and until today, nothing has been able to inhabit this damned place. So the area has been taken into custody by UNESCO World Heritage. Upon his way to the battle, Thamūd, Prophet Muhammad too had passed from that place with his companions. He forbade his companions to drink water from that area, and from using anything found in that God-forsaken land. And when the companions informed the Prophet Muhammad that they have already prepared the dough and have already fetched the water, the Prophet ordered them to spill the water they fetched, and feed the dough to the camels, and to drink the water, find the well from where the She-camel of Allah used to drink water. And during my research, I came across another hadith, which says that while passing from this place, Prophet Muhammad had covered his face. and had sped up his mount until he was out of that place. The people of Iram and the people of Hijr, they were sister nations, the cousin nations. In the first part of this chapter, I told you about the people of Iram, that they were like pillars themselves. They used to build magnificent pillars, and then they were punished by the fierce pillars of wind. Pillar over pillar, over pillar, over pillar. But did you notice something about their cousin nation? The people of Hijr, their women had screamed and provoked their 9 chiefs to kill the she-camel. The chiefs too screamed and asked Qadr to slash the she-camel with sword. The she-camel too had screamed to warn her calf, and the calf too, before it disappeared, had screamed 3 times towards Prophet Saleh. And after 3 days, another scream came to the people of Hijr, which left none to be able to say anything. Scream over scream over scream over scream. And such a deadly silence after these cousin nations that I think of a verse from Surah Maryam. Imagine how many we have destroyed before them. Do you still sense any of them? Or even hear from them the slightest of the sounds? If you're interested in learning more about this topic, please visit the previous part of this chapter on our Sufi Magic channel.